I just got back from a screening of Suspiria, and I'm spooked. Oh boy, what a spooky movie. Really, perfect October spooky movie season viewing. And usually in October, the local art house, they play classic horror movies, well, and classic and contemporary horror movies. And this was one of them. And I knew I had to go see it because to get the theatrical experience of this particular movie is definitely something you want to do. For starters, I mean, it's just one of the most visually magnificent horror films ever made. In beautiful, anamorphic widescreen, just a wonderful, wonderful looking movie. And for another thing, the score, that Goblin score, oh my god. To hear that, you gotta hear that on like the big movie theater stereo. I mean, what an iconic score that they put together. Truly, one of the great horror movie scores. I mean, like, other than maybe, I don't know, like, the usual stuff, The Omen, Psycho, Jaws. I mean, this is up there with the top best scores. This clearly, does 90% of creating this atmosphere of this movie, and right from the very beginning of the movie, it really does grip you with this atmosphere. It's like walking into a dream. It's so eerie, and it's just so spooky. I guess, I don't know. I still feel the spookiness from just getting out of the movie. But it is something you want to see on the big screen if you can. And just another reason why I wanted to see it is just because actually I hadn't seen it in quite some time. Actually, I know for sure I've spoken about it, at least maybe briefly, on this channel before, but it had actually been a few years since I actually sat down and watched it. So this was the perfect opportunity, and it's always kind of a great thing when you revisit a great movie that you haven't seen in a little bit, because your memory fades a little bit, and there's certain things you forget, and then you kind of remember all these key parts. You're like, oh yeah, this is good, and stuff like that. So it was great to revisit the movie in this particular setting, seeing it on the big screen and all that. And it's definitely easy to see why this, all these years later, now this was released in 1977, all these years later, still an enduring acclaim that the movie celebrates. I mean, like, every year, if you see these lists that they'll put out, like, the best horror movies ever made, the scariest movies ever made, you'll see this somewhere. I mean, maybe not always at the top, but you'll see it pretty consistently, I would say. And, of all Dario Argento's films, and maybe they're not all winners, this would be his best, I guess. I mean, well, maybe that's a point of contention, so I'll say it's at least his most popular, let's say that. And very easy to see why. And it hits a lot of bases for anyone who's like a horror fan. Like, I mean, so if you are a horror fan and you've never seen any other Dario Argento film, you're probably going to want to see this one. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. They'll at least see this one. If they're not a fan of Argento, if they're not a fan of Italian horror, they'll at least see this movie just because of its pretty solid reputation. And it does hit the bases that any kind of horror fan would want or would expect, because it is dealing in the supernatural. It is a movie, when all is said and done, it is about a coven of witches, causing harm to others, and all that, and all the supernatural elements that come with it. But it very much, in a lot of respects, feels like a slasher kind of movie. Like, there are really gruesome scenes of gruesome deaths, and it feels very slashery. And they're all, very elaborate, very over the top. And one thing I forgot is in that first murder, of the girl. You see like her chest opened up, and her exposed heart, and the knife stabbing into the heart. Oh my God, that's great. It's just fabulous. So you got to appreciate that element to the movie, like very much feeling both supernatural, but kind of like a slasher as well. So I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to it who enjoy these types of horror movies. And just if you do enjoy this visual style of the movie, like Argento, he has such a masterful eye in taking these locations and framing them in such a way that it feels very purposeful, very artful. Certain angles that you just even wouldn't even think of, like just the way he's able to place a light bulb in a scene, right? Like, it's so good. And like the lighting of the movie, obviously, just like simple stuff that just makes it look so wonderful. Like, you see the illumination of the rain in the red and green traffic lights, so you can like forgive the movie for opening on a dark and stormy night. And that scene with the silhouettes in the makeshift dorm setting that they set up, and seeing this witch behind the curtain, snoring, breathing, things like that, and even with the lighting, suggesting the action of breathing by just brightening and dimming. It's so simple, but just so effective. And any number of shots of this movie you can just call just masterful and wonderful, great to look at, taking full advantage of this wide screen in the film, which not all horror movies of this ilk have the guts to do, right? So Argento makes this movie and uses these locations, which I would assume that it's not it's not a budgeted movie where the sets are built from scratch, like it's some Stanley Kubrick production or something like that, where he finds these locations, decorates the sets appropriately, and uses them to full effect, which is just done brilliantly. Just so wonderful. It really is. I mean, you gotta truly praise the visual style of this movie, if nothing else. But there's a whole lot else to love. The plot is simple enough, right? I mean, we have this Susie character, it's Jessica Harper playing the role, who's very, very good in the role. She is an American arriving at this German ballet school where it's for the prima ballerinas. It's for the absolute best to hone in their skills, and on the very night that she arrives, that's where a murder happens to occur of one of the students who has been expelled, and a friend of this student, Sarah, who Susie also ends up befriending. She has her suspicions of what's going on, and could it be witches? Do you believe in witches, Susie? And all that. And wouldn't you know, she disappears. And so it's Susie who kind of goes down this rabbit hole, finding out further things about the possibility of witches, and speaking to this psychiatrist who had helped Sarah in the past, who, I think that's against their rules to say that she was a patient and she was treated for a mental breakdown. I don't know. I think he could lose his license for that. But he refers her to this expert who tells her the tale of this Helena Marcos, who's this black queen who's very, very famous in these parts, and perhaps is still running this coven and still controlling all these witches who use this magic, use this occult power, this great power, to bring harm to others, in certain cases, death to others for having offended them for one reason or another. But the ultimate goal seems to be power, seems to be great wealth, and I guess in some way, there is suggestion that this Black Queen, this Helena Marcos, is somehow consuming the essences of these young girls, and I would suppose, the more beautiful, the more talented, the more willful, the better, because I guess there's nothing quite like breaking their will and having them, bend to their power, right? So you do kind of see that working out in the film, where Susie kind of takes her own stances. Again, just little things at first. Her location for her bedding, right, where she's staying, and all of a sudden feeling ill, and it's due to their work, and they're trying to control her, and she's figuring all this out. Also, figuring out that when she did arrive, she saw that girl who ended up dying, and she's trying to somehow piece together these words that she was saying in the thunderstorm, something about secret, iris, right? And that all kind of pays off in the ending of the film. So it's great, and you do tend to forget that if you don't know what the movie is about going into it, which I do think back to when I first saw it, which it must have been years and years and years and years ago. If you don't know exactly that it is to do with witches and all that, it is kind of a good mystery too, where you slowly but surely figure out what this ominous presence is, what this danger is. So it's really effective in that sense, and just so good with Jessica Harper, who she is the heart of the movie. She has to kind of carry this feeling of paranoia, or if there is really such a thing of paranoia, and it truly is witches. The line is I don't believe in superstition. There's no such thing as broken glass, only broken minds, something like that, which is really good. And I think it's a movie that, maybe it's like I couldn't say. I wouldn't be the person to talk to about witchcraft and be an expert in that. And if this movie accurately depicts it in any way, but I would say at its heart it does believe in it, at least in a way, and it does take it seriously. It is serious for the most. It's a little bit cheesy, of course, in certain parts. It's almost unavoidable in these Italian productions. Sure. The dog that attacks the blind pianist is, a little cheesy, a little bit. The bat, a little cheesy, things like that. But for the most part, they really score big with the special effects, especially with that first murder and with the death of Sarah, which is really, really good, really brutal, falling into those wires, and she's just so, the worst part is she's just so close to escape, and she's like within arm's reach of it. So that's it really hits you good. It's just a wonderfully atmospheric movie, a wonderfully scary movie, just one of the best. It really is. So I'm so glad to have revisited it, and so glad to have had the opportunity to see it on the big screen. If you ever get the chance, you have to. You absolutely have to. It's just wonderful. So I was glad to add this to my horror movie viewing of 2024. That's one for the books. So I will be doing further reviews as this month is getting closer to the big night, Halloween. Stay tuned for the big giveaway. But I'll be doing more spooky, scary movie reviews. Stay tuned for more. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you next time, and until then, stay scared.